All right, happy Thanksgiving to everyone out there. I don't know if it's the happiest Syracuse Thanksgiving ever after another tough basketball loss yesterday to VCU. We're recording on Thanksgiving morning here ahead of the Arizona State game tonight, and lots to get to again. We'll break down this game. Is it time to panic for Syracuse basketball? That's the big question. We'll dive into it next on the Locked On Syracuse podcast.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, we thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen every single weekday. Tim, Leonard, Tyler Aki back with me today after a rough VCU win over Syracuse, 67-55 score. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, and that includes YouTube as well. I guess there's a number of different ways we can start here, Ty, because defensively, I thought it was a great matchup for Syracuse. I talked about that when I did the preview podcast, how VCU is a team that hadn't scored in the 60s all year. They hadn't made really any threes, just 15 threes in 4 combined games going into this. They're not a great rebounding team. I thought everything was really lining up here for a bounce-back win, and sadly, I was way off because the defense gives up 67 points, which is going to be probably a decent showing in terms of Syracuse's defense this year. But to VCU and giving up 44 in the second half, that's really unheard of.
I mean, you look at it, 44 in the second half, like you mentioned, you score 67 for the whole game. You're right. This is a game that 67 gets in some of these rock fights where it is only the 60 to 65 point range. They're going to be in every single game, but it almost reminds me of what you see when you used to play against Virginia, right? Where even though you hold them to a lower score, it's the pace that comes back to bite you. They play at such a slow pace. VCU is one of the slowest teams in the country. So them scoring 67 feels a little bit more like they're scoring 85 or so.
Right. And it is weird because they kind of have athletes and want to get out. And at times the game felt frenetic just because of how they speed you up in the first 10 seconds or so. And Joe Girard got overwhelmed a lot based on the press. I think that's my biggest takeaway from this matchup here. And we'll talk some more defense in a second, but just the lack of an ability to beat people off the dribble. That was a big concern with the offense going into this season. And Girard just couldn't get by anyone in this game. He ends up decent in terms of his three-point numbers. Again, he's off to a great start. He's 15 for 21 from 3, but then you look at his 2-point numbers. He's shooting 28% from 2. He had 6 turnovers in this game, and a lot of them were just him not being able to handle pressure. That's been a trait of his for a while, and it did make me think of Virginia. I'm glad you brought that up, and even Houston, just the way that if teams can kind of get in Girard's shorts a little bit and pressure him and, guard you 90 feet, that does overwhelm Syracuse. And that's their issue right now on offense is outside of Buddy Boeheim, and I'll give Jimmy Boeheim some credit. He made some nice plays in this game. No one else is really beating anyone off the dribble.
And what's made Joe Girard so good this year? It's the fact that he hasn't turned the ball over for the most part this season. Up until this game, he's been really good at protecting the basketball, having a pretty high assist-to-turnover ratio this entire season, but then he goes in, has a game like this where 6 turnovers, no assists. I mean, no assists for Joe Girard in this game. That's something that I don't think you or I really saw coming. This seemed like a pretty good matchup for Syracuse to kind of bounce back. You brought it up. It is a lower scoring team, and when you go up against those sort of teams when you're Syracuse, you think, okay, you feel pretty good about your team's chances of scoring 70 points, even if it is a slower paced team, just because offensively, you try to throw that team out of their rhythm defensively. And I thought that's what Syracuse was going to do in this game, but it was very, very far from that the entire time.
Right. And Buddy looks good. I was a little bit worried about Buddy, but he still was able to get a shot off. Nowadays, it's just so quick that he's able to contribute. The real issue right now.
Struggled from 3 in this game, 2 for 10.
Which that's what VCU is going to do. They tried to, Mike Rhodes had an interesting quote post-game. He said something like, we said if they don't make threes on us, we're in a great spot. We're going to win this game. They're not going to be able to do anything. And that's their big quote is they want to take you out of what you do. And they did it. And also, it's pretty concerning that Mike Rhodes can flat out say that. And I think that was my biggest concern with the offense coming in is it felt like it was a three-point shooting team and not much else. And they have shooters, but they don't necessarily have scorers or playmakers. And the lack of athleticism was on display on defense, but also on offense in this game because you're going up against such an athletic team in VCU that's pressuring you constantly. That's why we had a lot of people tweeting at us, where's Symir in the second half? He didn't play in the second half. He only had 4 minutes in the game. And Joe Girard is out there really getting overwhelmed by the pressure, turning it over a lot. I'm not a big Symir fan right now because he's 3 for 15 from the floor total, and he's not really giving you much in terms of when he gets in the lane. But at least he could get in the lane, and you just needed someone that was a little bit more comfortable breaking the pressure in this game.
Yeah, at some point you got to mix it up. And going back to what Mike Rhodes says, I think that you play this game 10 times, Syracuse probably shoots well in 3 or 4 of them and probably wins this basketball game in some capacity, just because I don't think this is the shooting team that Syracuse is. I don't think they're going to go 5 for 23. I don't know if it's the different venue that, I mean, these ballrooms can be tricky on you at times. So I'm not here to make excuses for them. You ultimately lost the game, but I don't think that this is the Syracuse shooting team that you're going to see. Doesn't matter what opponent it is, but there are guys that need to step up shooting the basketball. Whether I mean, Cole Swider, that's where the list starts and ends really for me. And then I don't think Buddy's a 2 for 10 3-point shooter for the most part. So there's going to be games like this. Again, this is kind of what we laid out at the beginning of the season. There are going to be games where they're going to go out there and shoot 60% from 3 and wow everyone. And there's also going to be games where they go out there and shoot 20, 25% from 3 and look like the worst team out there in the entire tournament.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Cole Swider. We need to talk about him because he's 0 for 7 from 3. He's 2 for 14 overall. This year, he's 3 for 22 from 3 now as we enter this Arizona State game. On one hand, it feels fixable. It feels like he's getting clean looks and he's just missing it. So there's reason to be optimistic there. And he's also like getting to the basket a little bit. There was one play that really stuck out to me in this game where he drove baseline and threw up a pretty wide open floater and just clanged it off the side of the backboard. And it was just kind of like a microcosm of the season where it's not like he's doing the wrong things before he shoots, but something's way off in his touch, his feel, his confidence with his shot. And they just need to get more from him. It's that simple. Like, especially in a game like this where you're not going to be, you need playmakers. You need your scorers to step up against a good defense. And Cole Swider has got to be in double figure scoring for this team to be anything. They're really counting on him to be Quincy this year or fill that type of void. And I know Quincy's not playing great at Oregon right now, but he was 18-8. He was an all ACC player last year. That's big shoes to fill. And Swider's a long way from that right now.
And you bring it up, he has made some nice plays. It just hasn't been in the scoring department. I mean, he had one play early in the game where you're right, he was getting in the lane, he was getting deep past the defense, and then he had a tough shot, but in midair he adjusted it into a pass that went to Jesse for an alley-oop that I was like, whoa, okay. Like, that's a really nice high IQ play there from Cole, and I was ready to come out here and compliment him today, but the rest of the game, you're right, it was just the touch isn't there. And I don't know if it's a confidence thing because we've seen him make those shots, whether it's at Villanova, whether it's in the preseason. He's made these shots that he's missing right now. So I don't know if it's something like, remember when Buddy first was a freshman at Syracuse? He was awful to begin the season, so much so that he was getting benched by his dad, right? And it was just, he was missing shots that he normally makes. And eventually he got into a rhythm, figured it out, and he all of a sudden started making those shots that he was missing earlier on in the season. I don't know if that switch is going to flip for Cole, but it needs to. It needs to for this team to have any sort of success.
Totally agree on that front. All right, college football fans, have you heard about PrizePicks? PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. I love it. I know you guys will as well. They are the leader in college sports daily fantasy and offer more college football props than anyone in the world. They have all kinds of options in terms of players, Power 5, mid-major, you name it, they've got it. PrizePicks offers any prop you can think of, from yardage to touchdowns, even interceptions thrown, and all new users or any user, when you deposit in, you will receive up to a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 when you use our promo code. That is locked on, all one word. Basically, you pick 2 to 5 players and over under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry It is just you versus the projected numbers. Download the award-winning app on the App Store and Google Play. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. PrizePicks is safe and offers fast withdrawals. Don't hesitate. Check out prizepicks.com. Use the promo code LOCKEDON or go to your app store and download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. So Cole Swider's not giving them much right now. The other guy I want to talk about, Benny Williams, because not really in this game. It was like a particularly bad game for him. He didn't score.
It was bad
he
all
was
around
out there
for everyone today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just, I mean, I think Buddy did some stuff that you needed and Jimmy did some stuff. And outside of that, it was bad. I mean, they really lacked like that Marek type presence in a game like this where you're beating the press and you just need more playmaking, more passing out there. They kind of fell into the old habits of the Syracuse offense where it was a little ISO driven. And I don't blame them. VCU is a great defense. I'll give them that. But also, VCU lost to Chattanooga. They lost to Wagner. This is a game you shouldn't have lost. On the Benny side of things, I feel like we're all kind of scared to say it a little bit, but he's got a long way to go right now. And I'm not seeing a ton that is sort of making me too optimistic right now. I mean, obviously there's athleticism, there's a ceiling there, but when you dive into his numbers, it's really not good right now. On KenPom, his turnover rate is second to last in the entire ACC. He's got a 37.7 turnover rate. He's got the lowest offensive rating among all eligible ACC players on KenPom right now. He's got a 62.5. The average is 100. He's just getting the basketball and turning it over a lot. And the part that worries me is, again, the shot. It doesn't look good, and it feels like if you're not shooting at a decent level, I just don't know how quickly he's going to be the player that we sort of dreamed he was going to be going into this season.
Well, the shot isn't my biggest concern. My biggest concern is his confidence. He shot one time in this game. I mean, how do you expect to get better if you're shooting one time? And I don't know if that's him not having the green light to shoot more than one time or what, but listen, you can have a bad shot. You can have a broken jumper all you want. There's different ways to impact a basketball game than shooting the basketball. You can get inside. You can drive to the lane. That's something that I thought he was going to be really aggressive with, even as a freshman, was attacking the inside. Now, okay, you might get your shot blocked every once in a while. All right, cool. But you should still have the wherewithal to get back after it, get in the lane, create your own offense inside. That's what I want to see out of Benny Williams against Arizona State. I want to see a guy who's aggressive inside. Use some floaters, use the backboard, use the glass a little bit, because that's another way to create offense where even if you might have a little bit of a broken jumper right now, there's different ways to score. And if he gets inside and gets some dunks, get some layups, get some easy offense, get to the free throw line, that to me is something that I need to see out of Benny Williams. Because right now, if you're not doing that, that just shows me you don't have any confidence right now in your offensive game.
And they really need him. I think I was a little off talking about, oh, he can kind of catch up at the speed he wants. But the way Cole's playing right now, just specifically given how athletic he is and how unathletic the entire team is as a whole, they need him. It really shine in a game like this where VCU is just littered with athletes, and Benny and Frank and Jesse at times are kind of the only athletes we have. And we can talk about Jesse because defensively, his foul trouble is still a concern right now. And
it's unbelievable.
It's not good. And there were some questionable calls in this game against him, but you can't really argue with the fact that his fouls per 40 minutes right now is a whopping 8.61. And to put that in context, that's dead last in the ACC. There's 101 eligible players. He's 101. And not only that, but 100 in the ACC is Francisco Cafaro from UVA. He's second to last at 7.1. So he's got a hefty lead in that column. When he went out, they really lost things on defense. And that's the shame of this thing. He actually did some nice stuff in this game. He just can't stay on the floor right now.
Right. And the drop-off defensively from Jesse to Frank is pretty significant. I mean, you even saw at the end of the game, too, where Boeheim was pulling Anselm in favor of Jimmy Boeheim to throw him out there at the 5. Because guess what? He threw Frank out there. There were some bad defensive possessions, and you don't have a choice. You can't use Jesse because he's fouled out. So you really limit yourself defensively on what is already a bad defensive team. So you need him out there. And here's the thing is, there were a couple ticky-tack fouls that probably should not have gone against Jesse. But at the end of the day, like, You just have to be smarter than that.
Yeah,
There's
he's
a lot of
jumping
these
at everything.
he's jumping
Any
at
pump fake
everything.
gets him.
Yep,
Yeah.
I think about that 5th foul that he picked up where a guy came in, I think he jumped twice on it.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things where that stuff cannot happen. It can't happen. You have to know the situation that you're in. He has to know the situation when he's got 2 fouls, that he can't pick up that 3rd because of how important he is defensively.
Right. And it's a fine line because I want him to be more aggressive. I want him to establish his presence a little bit more, whether it's rebounding. His rebounding numbers have to go up. And that's the one positive in this game is Syracuse did out rebound VCU, but that's what I lay down in the preview is that I felt like this was the bounce back game because VCU is not a great rebounding team. And as long as they were able to sort of beat the pressure, which really got to them and get into their offensive flow, which they never did, then I really liked their chances in this game. And I didn't see VCU shooting quite as good as they did from 3, but it was never going to be VCU was going to shoot like Colgate did. And that's why when you go back to the Colgate game, a lot of people were saying it's a bad matchup. Well, to me, this was the matchup to get right.
Yeah.
And now I'm awfully
This was a
concerned
good matchup.
because,
Mhm.
yeah, like if you can't stop VCU, who is literally a team that I would say you would zone for intentionally if you were a man-to-man based team, just based on their lack of shooting and their intention to get in the lane constantly. The biggest issue with the defense that I'm seeing this year is that high post area. I mean, every possession, they're getting a touch there. And when a guy gets it in the high post area, the zone is just way more vulnerable because actually VCU didn't really have a guy to make that floater, but they were constantly getting it. And also they were constantly able to kick it back out for a 3 or hit that cutter on the baseline. There's just so many options there. And for whatever reason, the high post area is just wide open this year. Constantly teams are getting touches there.
Right, and that's the number one scouting report thing I think against the Syracuse team is just get the ball there. It's so easy to score from there with what we've seen from VCU, what we saw from Colgate. It's just those rotations. If you can get quick rotations on the Syracuse team, they're flying all out of whack right now. And it's, I mean, you see guys in places that you've never seen them in the zone. I mean, you see guys like Jimmy almost at half court sometimes, and it's like, you're just not supposed to be anywhere near there right now. And that's been the big problem is everyone is just flying for the wrong reasons.
Right. So we're going to discuss if it is truly time to panic at this stage of the season for Syracuse. Before that, it is Thanksgiving, and we all know what that means, football. And nothing goes better with football and turkey than betting. BetOnline has you covered all holiday season, more props, odds, and lines than ever before. They remain your number one spot for all sports action this Thanksgiving. Head over to their new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus with the promo code LOCKEDON. And it's not just football. BetOnline has pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, even your favorite Vegas casino games. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports. BetOnline, we're stuffed with deals this Thanksgiving. Also want to tell you guys about Built Bar, because if you haven't tried a Built Bar by now, you are truly missing out. They say it's a protein bar, but it does not taste like one. Great for before or after a workout. You have to try one of these bars yourself to believe it. Most protein bars are chalky, they're waxy, they're hard to chew. A Built Bar is soft. It's covered in 100% real chocolate, and when you bite into it, you know you are eating something different. I love them. Tyler loves them. They are somehow really healthy for you and taste like a candy bar. They're low carb, low calorie, low fat, low sugar, yet high in protein. And they got so many different flavors to choose from. This month, Built is coming out with new limited time flavors every 3 to 4 days. So check their website often. You don't want to miss out. Go to built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15, get 15% off your order. Again, use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. So after the Colgate game, we kind of did this exercise. Is it time to panic? I've never really been too high on this team, but Colgate was a bad matchup. This is different. And now you get into, all right, this, we haven't even hit the part of the non-conference schedule we were worried about, or the part that we were really intrigued to see. And this is 2 teams above 100 in KenPom. There's not a lot of wins coming up here. And as much as I think they will figure things out in ACC play to an extent, and we'll see a better product than we're seeing right now. And as much as the ACC is weak and Syracuse just needs to get around the bubble, and that'll probably be where they settle, and we've seen them struggle in the non-conference before, this is a year where you could pick up 5 or 6 non-conference losses pretty easily if you keep playing like this.
Which means what? They're going to go out, beat Villanova, neutral site, beat Indiana. Like, we know how this goes, right? No, but like, obviously, this is a big concerning loss for everyone, because I think there was one scenario where you came to Atlantis feeling bad. You lost to VCU. And like, if you beat VCU and go out there and beat Baylor and go out there or lose to Baylor, to a UConn, or lose to a Loyola, like, if that stuff happened, all right, if you go 1-2, but you just had to do, I think, in this event. But that one win had to be VCU. If you lose to VCU, you open up a Pandora's box of questions, and that's exactly what this team did because of their struggle. And listen, this wasn't just a loss; this was an ugly loss. You were kind of in control in the beginning, but then you let that complete slip away with a couple untimely threes, some bad defense, all around just a poor shooting night on your end too. So this was the one result that was going to induce panic out of Atlantis. And it was almost a worst case scenario avalanche of activity that ensued as a result.
Yeah, it's frustrating too because I just don't understand why in these non-conference settings, whether it is at Barclays or at MSG or now, I mean, I know they won Battle for Atlantis last time they were here, but even that year they had some bad losses in the non-conference. It just feels like we always lose these games and we always lose them like really poorly. It's like whether it was UConn or Oregon or that year that we played Oklahoma State and Penn State and Barclays. It's just
Texas
getting
A&M,
really
I think it was,
it's
South
tiresome,
Carolina,
right?
South Carolina a couple of years ago.
Yeah, South Carolina was one, and all these teams we think, oh, I like the way they're looking, and then they go up against real competition. And here's the good news: I mean, Arizona State is not that good either. So you're playing the two worst teams outside of maybe you.
I mean, please don't lose to a
I
Hurley.
know.
I mean, there was
Yeah,
nothing that would make me projectile vomit my Thanksgiving meal like losing to a Hurley.
yeah, but I can't sit here and feel too good about them winning any of these Battle for Atlantis games because, in my opinion, VCU was clearly the worst team entering this tournament, and they just lost to them. And VCU was a bad matchup for us, or a good matchup, I should say. So, like, Arizona State is not a great matchup against
And
Syracuse on paper.
The thing that concerned me about whoever they played, Baylor or Arizona State, there's some sort of game plan tucked away in the archives for both of those
Yeah,
coaches, Scott Drew and Hurley, because you played them in the NCAA tournament in the first round of the NCAA tournament. So you had like an installed game plan against Syracuse and the 2-3 zone in a tournament style. Now, Syracuse won one, lost one, but there's something in place. You can go back, pull those notes, and they're still pretty applicable to what you're doing. Now, those were much better defenses that they were going up against, but if you had those blueprints against a good defense, what are you going to do against a bad 2-3 zone defense? That to me kind
right.
of worried me a little bit heading into this, is that the second game might be a little more difficult, even though the 2-3 zone should be at your advantage in these tournament style one day after another sort of formats.
Yeah, I'm worried. I think the part that really worries me is the lack of athleticism and the fact that then it makes it so that I don't know how much of this is fixable. I mean, it's not like magically these guys are going to get more athletic. It's not like overnight here Cole Swider is going to turn into a 20-point guy.
That I think, I'm not going to say he's going to be a 20-point guy, but he's not going to be an 0 for 7 from 3 guy.
Yeah,
All right?
I mean that part feels fixable, but
yeah. That part
the
could be like a
athleticism.
drop of a hat. The athleticism stuff isn't going to sort itself out. That is what it is. What you see right now, what you saw against Drexel, what you see against VCU, that stuff is going to be the same the entirety of the season. But
Yeah.
right now, it's like the keys to the season are held in the right arm of Cole Swider. If he doesn't figure this shot out, and this team can't establish a third scorer, there's going to be a lot of trouble. There's going to be a lot of trouble because this was supposed to be an offensive team, but when a guy who you thought could be your second offensive weapon has barely stepped up as your fourth offensive weapon, they're lies the problem with this team is when you're not getting the offensive production that you're expecting out of a guy in Cole Swider. That to me is the big issue.
Right. And honestly, like, I don't want to say this, but they need 16 more wins to get to 1,000 again for Boeheim, but officially 1,000. That would be an 18-win
Second
season.
time, yeah.
They should do that, but I mean, that looked like a wrap going in. Now I'm sure a lot of fans would jump on here and say, are we even going to have a winning season?
Yeah,
This could be
I
the
saw
losing
the 500 stuff. Like they're gonna
we
get
do
to
this every year
500.
though. Like
Yeah,
they'll get better, but at the same
they're not
time,
a 500
they're going to
team.
have
They may not be great, but they're not going to be a below 500 team.
yeah, but they might be below
If they were going
500
to be
here
below
soon.
500, if they were going to be below 500, it would have been last year because it was the shortened, condensed thing with a lot of conference games making up your schedule. Last year was the year to go below 500. Is not going to be this year.
Yeah. I don't know. I worry, and this is what I worried about going in, is last year's team was very good in the tournament, but also they weren't great in the regular season, and you lost a lot of what made that defense athletic. That was already a struggling defense. You lost Kadari, Quincy, Allen Griffin. Those guys weren't really masters of the zone, but Kadari was a guy that you really could have used in this game because he could beat the pressure, he could distribute, he could have, and that's why a lot of people were screaming for Torrance, and I get it. I don't like Torrance that much, but they should have played him more in this game, probably.
Yeah. I mean, you need a steadying presence out there. And I think Samir Torrance, listen, he's not going to get you 10 points a game. He's probably not even going to get you 5 points a game. But
Right.
he's a steadying presence out there, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully SU bounces back tonight. I think their offense is going to bounce back against an Arizona State team that's not great defensively typically, but
I do think they win
I'm
tonight.
a little worried.
I do think they win
Yeah.
tonight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to hear. I don't even know what to think at this point. I think this is a game you should win still, but VCU was one that I was really counting on as a bounce back because of the matchup. Didn't come
They
through.
needed that. Mm-hmm.
There's still time. Like they still
Okay.
have.
Yeah, it's game 4. It's game 4.
Yeah.
We're not here to overreact to these, but it's like when you string together these non-conference losses, that's problematic, especially when they're coming to teams outside the top 100 in KenPom. Like we've seen Syracuse lose in the non-conference. We haven't really seen them string together back-to-back losses against teams that are significantly worse than them. And that is where the problem lies.
Right. And against two polar opposite teams, though, that make you feel less that it was a matchup-based problem. But anyway, that's going to recap. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone out there. Hopefully, when you're watching the Syracuse game, you're at least got a lot of turkey in you already. You've maybe won some money with some BetOnline bets on football. You're feeling better. It's a happy day nonetheless. And we'll probably not be back to recap the Arizona State game. We're going to take the holiday tonight, but Friday night after whatever is their third game, which will probably be a night game, either 4 or 7 o'clock, we will recap that game. We will get all our post thoughts on the battle for Atlantis and look ahead to whatever is next for this basketball team because it's really revving up here. So good time to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available also on YouTube. Check us out there if you haven't already, and we'll talk to you guys on Friday night.